When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke.
When I grow up,
I want to be hired based on what I look like.
Rather than my skills.
I want to be judged
By my political beliefs.
I want to get promoted.
based on my chromosomes. When I grow up, I want to be offended
By my coworkers.
and walk around the office
On eggshells.
and have my words policed.
By HR. Words like
Grandfather,
peanut gallery.
long time no see.
No can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety
And do workplace sensitivity training.
all day long. When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder.
just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist. I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
We say that every time.
I know. We do.
Sometime we'll actually do it.
Oh man, I forgot to share the show.
Jeez.
Have you guys who are already in the room, have you shared the show? One of the best ways to help us is actually share the show. Click the share button. Thank you guys. Welcome to Water Break. It's good to be with you. My wife Annie and I'm the water boy and water girl. That's sure. Which camera? I'm looking at that camera, right? That's the only camera I'm looking at. Okay. And there's no, I can't see the red flashing light. Is there no red flashing light on that camera? Interesting. All right. Well, this week, this show is AMA. Ask me anything. So you're actually just asking me. I'm not going to let Annie answer any questions. So
I think
that's going to go well.
Yeah, we're gonna ask. You can start on all of these. I think you'll know the answers.
Okay.
To most of them.
So ask Annie. Really, I mean, let's be honest. Ask Annie anything. Show. Ask Annie.
But that would be
anything.
and that looks weird.
Or it could be Aga.
Oh my
Ask
God.
Gabriel anything.
Ask Gabe anything.
All right, that's enough.
Okay.
Hey, y'all, we're going to be at Cross Politics Fight, Laugh, Feast Conference in October. Love to see you there. Prodigal America. Go to prodigalamerica.com. Also, if you want to be in a conversation with us, like a number of you messaged questions this last week for our AGA show, you can email us at RenchMedia@gmail.com. That's RenchMedia. Don't put a W before wrench. It's just wrench, RENCH. media@gmail.com. You can email us there and be in a conversation with there. And of course, make sure you follow, really it's my wife who's the health advice expert. You follow her on Instagram. It's probably her best. I think she has a Twitter handle, but she never has. You never had a Twitter handle.
Well, you might have made me
I might have
one,
made you
but
one.
I refuse to use it.
My
can't go on the Twitter
Instagram. My wife loves picture books. That's why she likes Instagram so much.
I love picture books. I sit all day.
I was expecting a little more of a chuckle on that one. Picture books. That's all.
No, Instagram is a good place to find me, or my website, AndyWrench.com.
That's what
Those
I
are
was
the
going to
only
say
two
too.
places, really, honestly.
So, ask me anything. I'm actually going to go to all the questions that we got. You've kind of read through most of these questions. I just got out of a meeting, so I wasn't able to kind of look through everything yet. But where do you want to start with these questions?
Well, I wrote some down, and so we can just go through them. And some will probably be longer answers than others. But then I've got a couple here on my Instagram that I just want to make sure we don't forget because I didn't have time to copy those over.
Okay.
But we can start with these. Does that sound good?
Yeah, but I was just saying, where in the order would you like to start?
Let's just start with Anna. She asked, "Do you work out fasted?"
Okay.
And if more questions come up in the live feed,
that's what I'm going to go to. Yeah, if you guys got questions, I'll be monitoring the live feed and we can
get
answer
as
some
many
of those
as we
questions
can,
right now.
within reason. But I mean, Gabe, do you work out fasted? Do you work out?
Men handle fasted training better than women.
You just read from my notes.
Oh, is that?
You're not supposed to read from my notes. You're supposed to answer the question. That's what we just talked about. Do you work out fasted?
I can't even do this correct. Do you work out fasted? I mean, my workouts are actually pretty pathetic right now. But what I'm doing is I'm just going on walks. I'm doing push-ups, sit-ups. I'll do some air squats. I'll do some. This summer I was doing a little bit of training with my son in the mornings, and I pulled my hamstring.
Yeah.
Because I thought
classic.
I went into sprints. I was feeling pretty good about life.
Yeah.
And I did a couple sprints.
That's
and then
the risk of sprints for anyone.
Yeah. And honestly, I was I liked it because I like the thing I like about sprints is you run real fast and you stop. So you kind of use your strength to stop. It's short. Yes.
Yes.
And there's a little thrill to it, I guess. But Actually, I mean, I don't think I've ever worked out fasted, because even when I was playing basketball, like, you're eating a lot,
Yeah.
burning tons of calories and working out. So
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done that. So there you go. That's not a good
There you
help
go.
at all.
That's
But
fine.
your notes were pretty good.
Yeah, well, I wrote some notes down. I love this question, and honestly, probably at some point we'll do a whole show on it, because it's a
Okay.
really big conversation right now in the health space, because fasting is really popular. It has been for the last couple of years. All the influencers are like, it's a bunch of like, for the most part, if you notice, it's like perimenopausal, menopausal age women, most of whom don't exercise that much, who have all been really talking about it, and I think it's something that shouldn't be lost on us, just in terms of who's talking about it. But anyways, a lot of women, especially women who are weight loss resistant, wanting to lose weight, they hear that concept like, oh, if I work out fast, it'll burn more fat. Generally speaking, if you fast, you eat less. There's this thing called autophagy. There's all these fun, fun dazzle words around it. So a lot of women are now in the habit, and I would say have been over the last several years, have gotten in the habit of exercising fasted. And I tried it actually for like a full year. I gave myself a full year to get fully fat adapted, to try the whole fasting lifestyle. And I just wanted to do it myself before I recommended it or didn't recommend it to anybody. It was interesting overall. It wasn't a bad experience, but I will say my performance suffered on the exercise side of things.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Not just due to maybe not properly fueling any particular workout, although that's an issue, but also due to the fact that I think I effectively put myself in what we would call low energy state. And it's interesting, ladies, because, and I'm talking as a woman, obviously, and I'm talking to women, because women really we are really quite different than men. And the whole fasting conversation, or fueled workouts, not fueled workouts, is a perfect example of how men and women are actually quite different. And I think, unfortunately, not that many people are talking about that or even understand that. Most of the research, including the fasting research, has been done almost exclusively on men. So, you see great outcomes as a lady and you're like, oh, I should try that, but it's not always going to translate. But one thing I'll tell you, ladies, is one of the reasons that you might have come from a background of fasting, especially if you're trying to exercise, which I would argue you all should be. What you need to realize is with any change, anything that you might do, or I'm going low carb, or I'm running more, or I'm anything that you do, there's going to be lag time, where for a couple months, usually you can coast on the laurels of the things you were doing before. So like if you stop lifting heavy, you maintain some of that mass and some of that strength for a while. It's bio individual.
3 weeks, 4 weeks, up to
some people it's months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you start aggressively fasting, usually you get some seriously elevated stress hormones, catecholamine, so your adrenaline and cortisol and all those things, and that's your body's natural reaction to like, where's all something bad's going on. Where's all the food, and why are you still running? You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So you can coast feeling pretty good for a while. So sometimes I think people don't realize that an intervention they started 6 months ago is actually the reason that they feel so bad, or their performance has gone down, or their hair is falling out, or their sleep is going downhill. They don't tie it to that intervention because they're like, well, it's been a really long time since I started, and at the start I felt really good. So it's just something to be aware of. But all that said, no, I do not work out fasted anymore, even though I used to, and I did play around with it. And I will tell you, the biggest influence in my life that has convinced me that women should not be exercising, especially exercising intensely fasted, is Dr. Stacy Sims. She wrote a book called Roar. And if you are a female and you are an athlete, and by athlete, I mean anyone who trains, anyone, you don't have to be elite level. You don't have to
low
be
intensity, high intensity, doesn't matter.
Anything. And I would argue that all of you women should be training in some capacity. You should be strength training. You should be doing some sort of cardio. You should all be doing that for a billion reasons, many of which we've already talked about and we talk about all the time in the show. So I'm really talking to all of you women. She makes excellent arguments from a female physiological perspective why it is not good for us to exercise fasted. And again, it can work for a while. It did for me. And then eventually I just couldn't hit my numbers. I noticed metabolism slow down. I noticed thyroid slow down. I noticed increase in stress, just kind of around the clock. I don't think it's a good idea. And again, we could do a whole entire show on this, but really, a couple things to keep in mind is that women, and this is all from Stacy Sims' research. And again, I really can't recommend her book enough. You will have to sift a little. She's a bit of a feminist. She's going to say some things that you're probably not going to agree with, but her research and just her facts are, as far as I can tell, right on the money. And I don't know anyone else who's dedicated as much time as she has to understanding female physiology in particular as it pertains to sport.
Right.
Anyway, so a couple things just to illustrate my point of how men are different than women and how fasted performance or fasted training is not a good idea. Generally speaking, just nutrition wise, apparently men have about half the nutrition threshold before you start to see endocrine disruption than women do. So I think for men, they only need about 15 grams of any macronutrient really per kilo of lean body weight in order to not disrupt their endocrine system. We're talking adrenals, we're talking thyroid, we're talking HPA axis, all of it. Women are double. We need 30. So we just need more food on board around our training, especially our intense training, in order to effectively cue our body that we don't need to go into endocrine disruption. So that's very interesting. And these are all things that I experienced with myself, as I went through that year of pretty aggressive fasted training. And I've experienced it with my clients, but I didn't really have a scientific or a physiological way to explain it. And that right there, very, very interesting. Another thing she talks about is that basically we have neuropeptides in our brain called kisspeptin. Men apparently have one center for these. Women have two. So for all this time we've been talking about women are more sensitive to stress. We don't handle it as well. This is one of the reasons why we have like double the receptor sites, double the potential to disrupt these kisspeptin neuropeptides. And with women, one of them basically control LH, that's luteinizing hormone, and appetite. The other one is estrogen and thyroid. Okay. And if you do fasted training, especially a lot of it, actually, she said if you just do fasted training for 4 days straight, that's all it takes to disrupt thyroid. And boy, have I experienced that. It makes a lot of sense. And I've seen it happen in a lot of women as well. Another thing you want to keep in mind is that most of us exercise in the morning. Cortisol for everyone peaks anywhere from like 30 minutes to 45 minutes after you wake up. So adding fasted training with black coffee
cortisol peaks
it's the highest in the morning. And that's by design. It's your get up and go. You know what I mean? You're supposed to wake up. You're supposed to be alert. You're supposed to, this is why you don't want a cortisol dump at night, right? When you're like, you wake up and you're like, I'm so awake. You don't want that. You want it high in the morning. But for us women who are already trying to mediate our stress, and most of us aren't doing well in that department, adding fasted training in, and then like caffeine, which also raises cortisol, is a really terrible idea. And you're going to do harm to your body at so many different levels long term. That's one of the main messages of Stacey Sims, and I really do believe it, and I've lived it. So all that to say, I don't have an issue with some strategic fasting. I think a lot of women, especially cycling women, do it too much. If you're really, really active, especially, which again, most of you should be, okay? I don't love this paradigm of like, let's eat less and move less. I would really like to see it flip. Let's figure out how to eat more, especially around our workouts, and move more. Right? That's going to be a way healthier way to go. But ultimately, if you are going to do some fasting or even just time restricted eating, ease off on your dinner time, if anything, because that meal is away from your workouts, right? You need to really lump your calories in front of, like right before, and even more so after, within an hour, ideally, to get your protein and your carbs in, so as to fuel the work at hand, to allow appropriate recovery and muscle build. And most importantly, I would say, so as to not cue your body or your hypothalamus, basically, that you are in distress, you are in high stress, you are in a place of low energy that really can do a lot of damage downstream. So I do not recommend fasting, intense exercise fasted at all for women at all at this point. I mean, that's kind of the place that I'm at. And I really do think that you will be healthier long-term. Your metabolic rate will be higher long-term. Your thyroid function will be higher long-term. Again, skimp on your dinner a little bit if you're trying to get into more of a deficit. And anytime I do any time restricted eating at this point, it's on Sunday, because that's a day that I don't exercise. So I feel like my body's going to handle that better. So anyways, kind of
time restricted eating. What do you mean time restricted?
Time restricted eating is just and then these are words that are overused. And then also everybody means something different. TRE usually just means like in any given day, I have an eating window. So like maybe you're doing like a 16-8 or you're doing a whatever, which is like, okay, for 16 hours, I'm not eating. That includes sleep. And then for 8 hours, that's my eating window. And I don't eat outside of it. And I have no problem. And I've said this before, with you eating a dinner, even an early dinner, and then being done eating after dinner. I think for most active females, that's as much time restricted eating as you need. It's a good amount of digestive
It's just kind of
rest.
eat dinner, let's say at 5 p.m. and then just be done.
And then be done eating for many reasons. Some amount of digestive rest is great. Not eating during that point, usually at that point of the day, exercise is done. It's not a stressful time. You're usually winding down, you're resting. And usually the food choices made late at night are not good anyway. So there's a lot of reasons to stop eating after dinner, but I don't recommend waking up, eating nothing, and then doing your sprints.
So Alicia, I might be wrong here. Alicia Miller or Alicia Miller?
Yeah. She's part of my program.
Okay, she's asking how long without food would you count as fasted? I would say 30 minutes. If you're my son, he would say 10 minutes.
That's hilarious. Yeah, Cash can't go any amount of time.
It's like I fasted for 10 minutes. I need more food.
Oh my gosh. Okay, really quick story. One time last year or 2 years ago, I can't remember, Cash, our son, he's now in the 5th grade. He's probably in the 3rd grade. He was having this really hard time remembering his lunch. He would make his lunch. It would be ready. He just could not get it into his backpack and take it to school. And this happened like several days in a row or several times a week. And like sometimes I would be working, so I couldn't bring, and you'd end up bringing him like a Happy Meal. And it was just, we were like, okay,
we're starting to incentivize some things
like
there.
A perverse incentive. Also, I don't want him eating several Happy Meals a week, and you have a lunch, it's at home. So what I finally did is I just was like, son, from now on, if you forget your lunch, don't call us. Do not call us. We're not bringing you anything, and you're just going to have to go until after school. And nothing like hunger to teach a lesson. And like, I think that scared him.
You don't work, you don't eat. He didn't work.
I mean, welcome to reality. Welcome to reality. And it was so funny because a couple days later, he did in fact forget his lunch, and I was like, stay strong, because it's actually really hard to let your little 8-year-old son not eat. It's actually really hard.
Yeah, you had to stay strong.
I was like, don't do it. Don't bring him food. So I didn't. He did not call me. He was a good boy. And then when I picked him up at 3:30, he climbed in the car and he was like, well, I fasted today and I did not like it. It was so funny that he even knew the right terminology. But anyways, okay, she asked what time frame would count as a fast. It kind of depends, because at night, I mean, like 12 hours at night, that's a fast, but that's like an overnight fast. I would say so that's normal, that's natural. And you should obviously be able to go from dinner one night till breakfast.
Sundown to sun up, basically.
Yeah, you should be able to easily go, unless you're dealing with like, you're majorly underweight, you have some serious like hypoglycemic, maybe you're pregnant and not, maybe there are some specific cases where maybe that rule would be different. But normally you should easily be able to go from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. or whatever without eating. And that's normal. That's a normal fast. But during the day, I would say you should be able to comfortably go if you are eating enough protein, you are metabolically healthy, your blood sugar regulation is where it should be. You should be able to comfortably go like anywhere like from 4 to 5 hours between meals. You should be able to do that. And we do talk a lot on this podcast about how adults, for the most part, shouldn't need to be snacking. It's just a bad habit. It's not necessary. And having that digestive rest between big boluses of food, aka your meals, is a good thing. It doesn't mean, I think there are exceptions. If you're super, super active, if you're pregnant, if you're, trying to bulk, like there could be exceptions. But normally speaking, if all of those metabolic boxes are checked and you're eating enough calories in general, enough protein in particular at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you should be able to go 4 to 5 hours between meals fairly effortlessly.
Okay.
And I would just say that's normal. If you go much longer than that, if you're looking during the day, like, 8 to 12 or more, I guess I would call that a short fast, but
all right, let's go.
Different people call it different things.
Thank you. Is it Alicia?
I don't actually know. Alicia?
Yeah. I could go either way.
Tell us how you spell tell us how you pronounce your name.
Yeah,
I should know. It's only a name I've ever read. I've never seen it.
Okay, you never had it pronounced.
Do you have more? Do you want to go to?
Oh no, let's go on. Let's move on to the next one. How can you tell when you're overtraining? Is it normal, okay, to be bloated and not that hungry on the days you lift heavy? I notice a huge decline in appetite on heavy days, while I'm positively starving on sprint or VO2 max days.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, first off, good job incorporating sprints and VO2 max. That's excellent. Most of us should be doing that. And good job on strength training. So good work there. So Gwen, man, this is an interesting question, and I'm probably not going to be able to answer it in a satisfactory way, simply because I'd have to sit with you and ask a bunch more contextual questions to really get to the bottom of some of this, because this is really interesting. You say, is it normal or okay to be bloated and not hungry on the days you lift heavy? Bloated, no. dealing with like major bloat really anytime is not normal and not something that should be considered okay. Now, when I say not normal, I don't mean it's not common. It is common.
Yeah.
A lot of people deal with like bloat and it can come from many different places. The first place my brain goes when you say that it's seems to happen when you exercise is that it could be a cortisol issue. And that's a real thing. They call it the cortisol
You work out,
belly.
stress levels go up.
Yeah, especially if you're already a little dysregulated or there's something going on. But I will say that like swollen, like I went to spin class and I came out and I'm like swollen in the middle. That's usually cortisol. But interestingly, you seem to be dealing with this on your slow, heavy days, which are not as stressful. And you seem to not be dealing with it, if I'm reading this right, on your like sprint or VO2 max days. So I'm not sure. It could also not be cortisol. It could be a gut issue, which so many people have. So I'm not positive what the root is, but I will tell you that it is not normal. And you don't want to settle in life for someone who's just like, well, I guess I'm just bloated all the time. That's not good. That's a sign of dysfunction somewhere. And it's coming from something. So you'd want to get to the root cause of that. Generally speaking, slow, heavy lifting is not that stressful.
Yeah.
So I guess I would have to ask what those lifts look like. I would also ask you if I was there, are you training fasted? Because that can be a huge stressor.
Yep.
It can depend on what point you are in your cycle. It can depend on a lot of things. So besides just sort of throwing those facts at you, I don't really have an answer because I don't know all the details. Now, the point about appetite is interesting also. You say that you're not as hungry on the days you lift heavy, but you are positively starving on the sprint or VO2 max days. I don't think that's that abnormal.
No.
I do want to say, though, that we, and this kind of piggybacks on our last little question about our little mini conversation about fasting, is that hunger has been almost demonized, I feel, in the health space, especially amongst the like keto people and the fasting people, where it's like one of the main goals with all of these diet interventions and lifestyles is to like never be hungry, which I do understand because ravenous hunger all the time is a bad feeling. And it's very hard.
Not if you fulfill those urges.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's really hard to win via willpower when you're hungry all the time, right? So I do understand that. And also if you are coming from a place of eating a lot of heavily processed food, that is going to cause you, due to way huge dopamine hits and all the different like really addictive chemicals in those foods, those sorts of foods make your hunger very dysregulated. It can whack out your leptin and it can literally make you ravenous when you shouldn't be, right? And that's a really bad feeling too. Yep. And I understand that a lot of people come to fasting or low carb or whatever in order to get away from that. And I really have no problem with that. But generally speaking, hunger is a sign that you are healthy and that your metabolic rate is doing well or increasing. And you actually want that to some degree. So I understand that it's a little uncomfortable to be hungry. And I guess I'm kind of going outside of the scope of this question. I just wanted to make this point. But hunger is not a bad thing. And I think that we as Americans have this desire to be comfortable all the time. And to some degree, you don't want to put yourself in a place where you're hungry all the time. That's not good. And we just talked about that. Like you should be eating like 3 square meals. You should have a lot of protein at each meal, eat enough so that you're not starving in between. You got to manage your blood sugar. That's a big deal with hunger. But sometimes you're going to feel hunger, and that does not mean that you're doing something wrong. In fact, I think it's something that we all need to become better friends with.
Right.
Like the fact that you might wake up hungry. That's actually an encouraging sign that your metabolism is like moving, like it's like roaring, and it's cueing you to eat. Sometimes it's cueing you to eat, and you should. Sometimes it's cueing you to eat, and you're like, I know I ate enough. I'm going to wait till dinner, and that takes a little bit of self-control. But I feel like we got to learn how to manage that, because this whole like stuff your gullet with so much protein to where you're just so full you can't even look at, what I mean? That's not healthy.
Well, every time you feel a hunger urge and you're like, oh, I need to eat.
Or just like I'm in ketosis all the time because I'm not hungry. That's not healthy either. Like we're just make sure that whatever you're doing, you're not running away from hunger in an unhealthy way. And every once in a while, hunger is normal and it's good. But all that to say, I don't think it's that strange to not be as hungry on a heavy lifting day. A lot of people experience a lot of hunger when they do cardio, regardless if it's like 45 minutes steady state, sprints, VO2 max. Those can really stimulate hunger. So I wouldn't say that's abnormal. Embrace it. Eat enough. Eat around those training bouts like we just talked about in the last question. So at least some amount of carbohydrate and a little protein at the start. Doesn't have to be a lot. And then really eat a good meal after within an hour. Put a lot of your daily calories right around that. That's going to help you mitigate that hunger, and your body's telling you something for a reason, So Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I really answered that well, but again, the hunger thing, I wouldn't say anything that you're experiencing is that weird, but the bloat you would want to get to the bottom of. So, anyways.
So the next question, I got this. I got the non-technical answer.
Okay, Gabe's gonna. We'll tell him what the question is.
Yeah. So my knees cave in when I squat. Thoughts on how I fix that? So squat and thoughts are right next to each other.
Gabe
so I had to pause a little longer.
How to fix your squat?
Yeah, your squat and thoughts.
Yeah.
How?
I didn't write any.
You have inside muscles. You got to build those up.
Inside muscles.
Yeah, that's you got to build up. You got to squat and you got to work on the muscles where they're if her knees are caving in, then she's got to her inside muscles are stronger than her outside muscles.
So you think she needs to strengthen her inside muscles more?
No, her outside muscles.
Okay, that's better.
There we go.
It's inside or outside. It's one or the other.
Yeah, we're stronger muscles on the inside. Is what I was trying to say.
That's what we call them in the gym. We call them the outside muscles.
Do you really?
No.
Oh, I was like, I mean, I knew I wasn't going to give the technical. I got the non-technical answer, but then when you
actually, I do call them side buns though, because adductors is just everybody's like, what? So side buns. That's what we talk about.
Is that the outside muscles?
That's your
side buns?
Yeah. So like your glute medius is you've got your glute maximus. That's your big booty muscles, like your big glute muscles, and then you have a couple other kind of smaller, more internal ones. And glute medius are the ones that more sit on your side. So if you're going to lay on your side and do like one of those Jane Fonda leg lifts, that's your glute medius.
I do them all the time.
I know you do. Yeah. He doesn't. He doesn't do that. But I know you're on the right track. So Jen,
and by the way, it's Alicia. So she was
Alicia. Okay, thank you very much, Alicia.
She said A for effort.
A for effort. Thank you. We tried. We care. So if your knees cave in, we call that knee valgus. It's very common with women. It's more common with women than men. Women are more mobile in general than men are. Probably just due to the fact that we have babies. I mean, honestly,
your body adjusts for babies, whatever.
To be more mobile. Yeah. And we also have a wider, what they call Q angle, which is just literally the angle made between basically your hips and then where your kneecaps are. And guys tend to be more narrow, so they tend to be straight up,
straight up and down.
This was my knee. Okay. Girls tend to be more like this because we have wider hips, and so that's what we call a wider Q angle. And when you have even just millimeter difference, very small amount of difference, that's going to change the angle at which when your quads contract, it's the way that basically your knees are going to track, your kneecaps are going to track. So you also see girls having more like patellar femoral syndrome. That's basically runner's knee. That's when your kneecap tends to track outside laterally, simply because your quads contract, and because of the angle that they're out, that's where they go.
Yeah, it's all in the angle. How you handle the weight is all in the angle.
And this is why women are more prone to knee injury in general, and also in sport. You're going to see a higher incidence of ACL, MCL, meniscus, sometimes the triad of all three at once. We're more prone because of that. And this is just one argument, you guys, of 10 billion why you need your lady high school, junior high age girls lifting weights. Okay. Like you really do. Now, obviously, I think all women should be lifting weights because you can put your MCL or ACL or whatever out any old time, tripping on a curb, doesn't really matter. But female athletes need to train, and they need to be training with someone who knows what they're doing. It is a huge deal because they are more prone to knee injury for the reasons we just talked about. But all that said, it's actually quite simple. There's a lot of different things that you can do. Sometimes with knee valgus, some of it is just poor movement patterns, like poor habits, right? Where your body from the time you were a kid just naturally caved in. And so you just never fixed it. And that's just what you're used to. So some of it is slowing down, going lighter, utilizing a mirror so that you can retrain your knees to track in line with your toes.
Right.
Okay. But in terms of the muscles that are probably weak and that need to get stronger in order to help you not have so much knee valgus that cave in, that's going to be mostly glute medius, right? And that's the outside muscles. Outside muscles. Glute medius, side buns. Anything banded. So if you put a circle band around your knees, a light band, a heavy band, whatever, banded squats, band walks, banded glute bridges, anything that's going to force you to have to drive your knees out so they did not cave in, that's going to help fire up your glute medius. And that goes a long way. So it's really just a combination of those two things.
Okay. I had a really good question there.
About the outside muscles?
Yeah. You said you were kind of jokingly saying the Jane Fonda muscle or the Jane Fonda exercise. That's one, but you put a band on it.
You can, but you can also, if you go side lying, you can work those muscles without a band too. You're using gravity. right? Because you're laying on your side. So you'll see clamshells, clamshell hip ups.
Yep.
There's actually a lot of things you can do. And these all show up. If you go through like an ACL surgery, a lot of this glute medius stuff is going to show up as part of your rehab because you really do need those muscles to pull their weight. So some of these exercises will feel very, I don't know, girly or rehab-ish, like PT, because they are, but they're very important. And you're not doing it because you're like, I just want to be so toned in my side buns. You're doing it for your knee health. And it's very, very important. So that's a good question.
It's very helpful. Alicia, man, there's too many. This is a different Alicia.
Different Alicia. You
spelled
guys.
Differently. So we got,
are you sure?
We got Alicia in the comment section, who is ALICIA. She's over on Twitter. And then we got Alicia, who's on YouTube, AELISHA.
Okay, geez.
You guys.
Hello, Alicia.
Can we are you guys coordinating this?
Probably not.
Alicia over on YouTube said, is there such thing as a healthy overweight person?
Oh man.
But I would just say, like, to me, the definition isn't overweight. I don't like our modern BMI, whatever definitions of what it means to be overweight.
Yeah.
So I kind of reject our whatever modern scientific push there.
Yeah.
Without trying to reject, some of the obesity and some of the obviousness of we weren't obese in the 1920s and we now are, but totally.
You
know where I always start these things. I start these things where I push back,
I know. That's a really good question. And a lot of people are talking about it because metrics matter, like an objective standard matters, but also I don't think that standard should be BMI. Yeah. You know how many female athletes, if you looked at their BMI, they would be more categorized as morbidly obese.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's one girl, I can't remember her name. She's very popular on the U.S.
Like Olympic. Scandinavian or something.
Oh, well, I mean, that's all those CrossFitter girls. I mean, their BMIs are probably through the roof. They are so heavy because they have so much muscle on their body. But there's this girl, I can't remember her name. She's very lovable. She has a huge TikTok persona.
Is it that soccer gal?
She's on the women's rugby team, but she's very famous for talking, and she made it to the Olympics. So she's a great athlete, obviously. But she was talking about how her BMI is like 30. She's like, according to BMI, which is just a ratio of height and weight. That's all it is. And then the government, someone decided that if you're in this category, then you're fat. You know?
Right.
And she's like, but I'm going to the Olympics. Really, her message is true. It's very valid. So, okay. So it depends on how you're defining overweight. And I don't know that we even have a good definition of it because there are body types.
Right.
And we all know it. There are some women who are naturally just, their bones are tiny.
Yeah.
They are hard gainers. They are naturally so lean. Yeah. And if they were to weigh 30 more pounds, it would probably be 30 to 50 more pounds of fat.
Right.
And that would be overweight for them, even though the weight on the scale might be a very, very healthy weight for someone else. Right.
Yeah.
So there's body types, and there's some girls that are just bigger. Their bones are bigger. They have more muscle on their body. Like they're just, maybe they're 6'5". Like, what I mean? Like they're going to weigh more. So I don't think there's a weight or a ratio or anything that you can really have an objective standard there. I think BMI is a joke. The more active you are, and then body, like what it's made of makes a huge difference. Also, you could be 5 foot, 155 pounds and overweight and unhealthy because so much of that weight is just fat.
Yeah. Just storage.
You could be that and the same weight and have so much lean muscle and weigh the same thing and be incredibly healthy. So I don't really like to talk weight that much until you get into like the Lizzo category. Like if you're 350 pounds and you're 5'2", there's no way that's all muscle. You probably are overweight, but you know what? Your blood work will probably show it. Mm-hmm. And it's probably happened where you get somebody who is carrying a decent amount of visceral fat, but their blood work looks good. But that, I will say, in my experience, is very rare.
Right.
So I would just say, take into account your body type, focus more on what your body can do, how you feel, and like, does this weight feel and look healthy? Okay. It doesn't need to be thin. It doesn't need to be, does it look like this other person over here, or this other person over here? Don't worry about BMI. It doesn't matter. Build as much lean mass as you can. And then get your blood work done and get it done every year and see where your insulin is, see how your liver is, see where, your CRP, that's your inflammation marker. Check all those boxes every single year. If those look good, you feel good, then I don't care what you weigh, honestly. And I think you could call that a healthy person. I do think some people make arguments every once in a while. And again, I think this is very rare if it happens at all, where you might just be like visibly pretty obese, lots of visceral fat, and their blood work still looks good. My question is, in 10 years, is it still going to look good? Because a lot of visceral fat is normally correlated with a lot of metabolic disease. Maybe not right now, but down the road, it also can just be very highly inflammatory. So when you get into the Lizzo
category,
then I'm like, okay, that's probably not healthy, but I do think you can be healthy at many different sizes. I really do. Yeah.
That's really good, baby.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is from our show with Dr. Amy.
Oh, this is from Jess. Yeah.
And if you didn't,
this is a great question.
I don't know if they want their names being said, do you?
I just don't say last names.
Okay.
Say all the names.
Next,
we can't even say them right.
If you missed our Dr. we can't. Alicia.
It's a mystery.
If you missed the Dr. Amy show, go back and listen to this that whole
really
show.
Good.
It was really good.
It was really good.
Dr. Amy said and it's Amy, AMIE. Dr. Amy said the thyroid is the master gland. My endocrinologist told me that the pituitary gland is the master gland. Does that make a difference? I have a microtumor on my pituitary gland.
Yeah. So that's a good question. I mean, so the pituitary gland is found at the base of your brain, and it's basically an integral part of what we call the HPA axis. HPA stands for hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenals. And that's basically a very important communication system in your body it's very important. It regulates hormones, your autonomic nervous system, and then also helps you manage stress. So the HPA axis is very, very important. And one of the hormones that the pituitary is responsible for is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. So her endocrinologist, I think, is correct, just hierarchically speaking. That's kind of the top, those are the top glands, or the, HPA, the hypothalamus and the pituitary. And then right below that would be your thyroid gland. So I don't think he's wrong when he says that. However, when Amy says the thyroid is the master gland, she's not as much saying that because it's technically true. She's saying it because if the thyroid gland is off, all systems of your body are off.
Yeah.
Your metabolism, your appetite, your energy, your skin, bowel movements, hair, everything. That's what she means. So I think both are true. They just are meaning different things. So anyways, that's a good question. And I will also say, she said, what did she say? That she has a tumor on her pituitary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A micro
tumor. So it's fairly common.
Okay.
To have, they're usually benign. And usually the way that people know is that they test prolactin, and if prolactin is elevated and you're not like a mom nursing a baby, because that's really the only time prolactin is supposed to be elevated, they usually are like, oh, you might have a tumor on your pituitary. But I will say that most of the women I have worked with who do have a tumor on their pituitary are hypothyroid, some of which have discovered that already, some of whom haven't, but a lot of times those ones who have are under medicated, or one way or another, something's going on so that their free T3 levels are really low. So it is something to pay attention to, and it does seem to affect the function of your thyroid. So that's just an interesting thing that I've noticed.
Okay.
And I just actually had two questions.
Okay. This next one.
Yeah.
I have most of these supplements now. Any particular time of day? Ooh, interesting. With or without food, timed, around a workout, etc. I should take them. So far, I'm just taking all the capsules at night, MTC powder and coffee, electric lights after workout. Thanks. And then I'll read through her cocktail here.
Okay.
She has MCT, berberine, multivitamin, mag, omega-3, turmeric, vitamin D plus vitamin K, electrolyte, L-glutamine.
Pardon
me?
L-glutamine.
Okay. And then glycine. I mean, you shouldn't really have to take glycine. You can just get that out of your vodka. Just kidding.
It's glycerin.
Oh, shoot.
Okay.
So that's the cocktail she's taking.
Okay. It's a great list. This is a lot of some combination of these supplements are what I recommend to a lot of people. Okay. So we can go through these quickly. MCT, medium chain triglycerides. I like powder. You can do it as an oil. In coffee's great. I wouldn't say take MCTs all the time. They're very, very synergistic with being low carb or being fasted because they go straight to the liver and they're converted to ketone bodies, which is what you kind of are already naturally supposed to be creating when you're really low carb or you're in a fast. So
Okay.
I tend to lean into MCTs on the days when I know I'm going to do a short fast, which again, like we just talked about, is not that often because of how active I am. It also helps you not manage your hunger. So like I'll use MCT in my coffee if I'm going to go on a plane ride and I don't want to eat their crappy food.
Right.
It really helps.
Yep.
It also helps. I mean, even like I'll often do MCT in my iced coffee right before I come on a show like this. It helps you with mental acuity.
Ooh.
So I would just say use it strategically. You don't need to have it all the time because taking anything all the time long term is not a good idea. But it's great, and it's a great little tool to have in your tool belt. Berberine, very similar. I would use it as a tool. All supplements, no matter how great they are or how great the research is, become less effective the more you take them. So berberine is otherwise known as like nature's metformin. So it helps greatly managing or kind of blunting blood sugar spikes.
Sure.
It also can be used to amplify the effects of a fast. So whenever I do a fast, like Sunday morning, I will take berberine at the start of it to help.
You do fast Sunday morning? I'm not following this.
It's like I
must have missed this.
Like I just don't eat breakfast sometimes. Yeah.
That makes me sad on Sunday.
It works well for me on Sunday because I'm not exercising.
Yeah. All right.
But then, then I eat lunch. It's not a long fast, but berberine can help amplify a fast. Sometimes I have people strategically put it around their carbiest meals. So we're going to go back to the drawing board for you tonight about like, what should these next 3 months look like? I think I'm going to try to somehow incorporate carbs at dinner again. And it's probably going to involve berberine so that when you do have your potatoes or your rice or whatever it is, you can take a gram of berberine just to help kind of mitigate that big spike that you might be getting. So there's a lot of uses for it. It's also excellent for the gut. It's excellent for the liver. It's really a magical molecule. But again, even this, I would take strategically and I would pulse, take it for a couple weeks, take some time off, take it for a couple weeks, take it, or do what I do and just pull it out for particular uses here and there, just like I do for MCTs.
I want to ask a question about turmeric because I just thought of this. I had so she's taking turmeric as part of her cocktail. But I remember I had a friend who was taking turmeric and had been taking it for years and then started having like kidney problems or something.
Yeah. I mean, again, a lot of these things, too much of it for too long, you will end up with problems.
Yeah.
Liver problems, kidney problems. And sometimes it's funny because sometimes it's like the organ starts failing when that was the organ that you were taking it for in the first place. And that can totally happen. So just another example of how you really want to pulse your supplements. So I'm skipping a couple, but omega-3, turmeric, those really both fall under the category of like anti-inflammatory. So a lot of people who are trying to avoid things like ibuprofen, they'll take turmeric instead. It is an anti-inflammatory. It can work pretty well. Omega-3s, if you can find a good quality one, that's the huge caveat with omega-3s. That's probably its own show also. Those really can help with inflammation. Omegas are great for inflammation of the brain. So maybe if you're coming off of like your kid's coming off of a concussion, high dose omega-3s. If you're just dealing with overall inflammation due to autoimmune, due to, I don't know, a super, super stressful event in your life, maybe somebody dies, maybe you have whatever. You can use them, but you want to use them strategically and not too long. And I will say, I've started leaning harder into curcumin, which is really the active ingredient in turmeric that everybody's really going for.
Okay.
And so you can get more of a therapeutic dose of the curcumin in the turmeric, if you just go straight to curcumin. So that's a thought. That way, when you are taking it, it's a little bit more impactful. But one thing I'll say for anything that's anti-inflammatory, if you're strength training, which again, I hope you are, I know Jess is, so good job, Jess. You don't want to be on anti-inflammatories all the time because the way that you get stronger is you damage your gym, your muscles one way or another in the gym. And then you want that natural inflammatory post-exercise response. This is why you shouldn't be cold plunging anywhere close to after your strength training sessions because it can actually hurt your strength gains. And I think the same with always taking anti-inflammatories. Now, you have to decide if you're at a particular point in your life where you're like, I just had knee surgery and I need the anti-inflammatory more than I need gains. Then that's okay. That would be a good example of a season to pull these supplements out, but I would not just take them all the time forever. And your poor friend with kidney problems is a good example of that.
Well, I think he found out and he stopped taking it. And he got better. He's like,
well, it's actually really awesome that it was a simple fix like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and I don't think so far, we talked about specific times of day for berberine. Omegas, turmeric, you could take in the morning. But again, I think it's more just about pulsing it. A multivitamin, a good quality one is probably one of the few supplements that I would say you could probably take year round, simply because our food is just not what it used to be. I wish it was, but I think it's really hard to get all the micronutrients that you need out of food, even if you're eating clean at this point.
How valuable is a multivitamin? It seems like you're just getting incremental doses of each all slammed into a vitamin. And then, you know,
I mean, the idea is some of these things like selenium or all the different Bs or all you just, a healthy body just needs very small amounts of it. And there's no way we're getting it. Especially living up here in the north where the growing season is short. Things are things are
sparse
very
during the
seasonal.
winter.
Like we're not getting the rainbow of vegetables and fruits all year round. So I think you can make a good argument to take that all year round. But again, you do want to, stick with Thorne, stick with pure encapsulation, stick with the good brands, because there's also the question of what the heck is actually in this.
Because a little bit of, just thinking, kind of a response or thinking kind of a counterpoint here, which is it's not a very good counterpoint, but when our babies come out of the womb, we don't want to start injecting them with all sorts of chlamydia in their eye medicine,
chlamydia,
not chlamydia, anti-chlamydia medicine, in your eyes. And,
You're right.
Then,
we don't want to do that.
Hepatitis B vaccine, stuff like that.
Yeah, no.
And then, then in terms of then why vitamins? What's going on if we reject the vaccine as soon as our baby's born, kind of thing? Then why multivitamins or whatever?
Well, I don't know that I would compare a multivitamin to a Hep B vaccine that possibly has aluminum and formaldehyde in it. I wouldn't exactly say that's an apples to oranges argument. I mean, there's some things that you will do for the rest of your life, like brush your teeth or eat good food. And if you stop doing those things, you're going to have problems. I do think in a perfect world, we should not have to supplement at all. And I think that people's goals should be to take as few as possible. And that there's a very human tendency.
And that their nutrition is maybe more holistic.
There's a very human tendency to want to take a pill for something rather than adjust. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'll take this liver supplement instead of drinking less. Or I'll take this because I don't like vegetables or I'm too lazy to cook them or learn how. So if that's kind of your point, I totally agree with you. But like I just said, I think at this point, at least from what I know, and I'm open to my mind being changed, I think our soil is depleted enough and our food is depleted enough right now, especially up here where we're not able to grow a lot of the foods that we might be wanting to eat.
We can't grow pineapples in northern Idaho.
We can't grow a lot of things. And especially I can barely grow a succulent. So, I think you can make an argument for a good multi. But I do understand. I think I understand the point you're making. And I barely make that argument about anything else, but it's basically multi and electrolyte, which is farther down her list, where I would say you probably want to be taking that in some amount all year round, probably. Mag is great. Take that at night. It's relaxing. It's calming. So if you're going to be taking it, take it at night. Even Mag, though, I would rotate. I tend to rotate types, L-threonate, citrate, glycinate, just to mix it up. If you go a week without magnesium, that's perfectly fine. It's not normal. And speaking of things being seasonal, one of the reasons I tell people to pulse their supplements is not just because they become less effective. And I mean, they will, if you take them regularly, they'll stop working as well. Or you'll create some sort of problem somewhere else, like your friend with their kidneys. But in nature, we never get the same thing all year round. You get more fruit in the summer. You do more root vegetables in the winter. Like, that's normal. And so you want to take that same approach with your supplements. It's small amounts just throughout the year, and everything is kind of pulled. So that's what we're trying to mimic. Vitamin D plus K2, I would mostly focus on taking that in the wintertime, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. We get very little sun. Real sunshine is better, you guys. It is better. And I'm telling you,
it gives you better vitamin D.
And it gives you better everything. I think the sun and the health benefits that come along with getting regular daily sun, specifically sun in the morning, is horribly under-researched and underrated. And I think it is the next frontier of conversation. I think these last several years, everybody's been talking about gut, and rightly so. But I think sun is coming. And I actually am thinking of a couple people who I would love to get on this show. Dr. Alexis, what is her last name? She's really good. She's a fan of Joel Green and is now doing tons of research and has a lot to say about sun. And I think our audience would probably find it very, very interesting. I will find her and I will reach out to her because I'd love to put her on.
We have a little interview list in our notes.
I just need to look up her name so I remember what it is. It's Alexis something, but
interview list. Yeah, we got an interview list.
Yeah, I would love to get her on, but because sun is huge. But all that said, we're in Northern Idaho. We have lives, we have kids. There are from October to May, we see so little sun. It's just sad. So number one, even if it's overcast, even if it's just literally taking your lunch outside for 10 minutes and sitting in the sun while you eat it, get as much natural sunshine as you possibly can. And then beyond that, during the cold and flu season, basically, probably supplementing some D plus K2 is a good idea.
Yeah.
Eating it around a fatty meal will help you absorb it the best, but ultimately you can probably take it any old time. It doesn't really matter. So, I mean, whenever you're going to remember to take it. Electrolyte, take that daily. I think we all need it, especially those of us who are trying to eat less processed food. And we're trying to exercise more. Maybe we're
how would electrolytes help with those who are trying to not eat as much processed food? Does it help kind of make your body full? Or
no, because the average American's main source of salt is processed food. So if you
not this guy,
I mean, you're doing better.
He just looked at me.
I was thinking.
I mean, I put salt on all my food.
That's true. You do. I think there's something wrong with Gabe. Like, I think that if I gave
I like
him,
flavor. Like, there's nothing wrong.
You know, like you can give a hamster or like a horse like a salt lick. I think if I gave him
and
one,
he hung one above my bed at night, and just while I'm sleeping, I'm just like, nah.
I don't know. He likes so much salt. So I see your point, and you're right about that. But yeah, no, if you're eating lower carb, you will dump salt. And if you're not eating as much processed food, you're just not getting as much. So I think almost everybody, especially people who are active and trying to eat healthy, which hopefully is all of you, you should be taking some sort of lower dose, at least daily electrolyte, and you can up it if you have a huge workout day, if you got a lot of sun, you were sweating, if you did sauna, you could go morning and night, and it doesn't matter. Some people like to take it in the morning. Yeah. Some people like to take it at night, but I would, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure you're getting it in. And that you remember. L-glutamine, I doubt you're using that, so I'll just not mention it. And then glycine is the last one. I love glycine so much, you guys. There's a lot of research on glycine right now. I feel like it's like berberine, but like not as well known, like not as sexy, but it is just an amino acid. It's dirt cheap. It is present in your collagen, probably. It helps you be full. So it is a great hack, like after dinner when you know you've eaten enough and you're like, I know I'm going to get the snackies. I'm going to want ice cream. I'm going to pop 3 grams of glycine. It's going to help me just kind of take the edge off. It also aids sleep. So a lot of people, if magnesium alone does not cut it for them, in terms of getting a good night's sleep, falling asleep and staying asleep, glycine is the next thing that I add. And it's not, you can take it right before bed for sleep, but it's like it's just going to calm you down. It's not going to it's not like taking a melatonin. It's not going to make you groggy. You can function fine, but it's great for sleep. And there's also really great research about it being great for the liver. So, and the liver is super important. It affects almost every process in our body. So I'm a huge fan of glycine, but I would take it at night, anywhere between when dinner's over and bedtime, depending on what you want it for more.
All right. So now we're here to the question about seed oils.
I know, but no.
Oh, did I miss one?
No. Well, I need to get to Chantel's question.
Oh, that's on your. You get to do Chantel's. We can talk about seed oils later, because honestly, when we do a whole show on seed oils, I'd like to put some videos together and kind of show some of the process.
Yeah, I think we need to make a whole video or a whole show about it. Okay, so Hope asked, and I didn't have a chance to write it down. This is a good one. She said, "Can you give me more detail about the hows of doing sprinting? Like how much time to do on them and how much recovery? Are there different general principles to follow, like ratio of work to recovery?" It's a fair question. Like the other day, I did 1 minute of work and 2 minutes recovery, but then I saw the 4x4 is 3 minutes of recovery. Thanks. Okay, so
I got this one.
Okay, good.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, I was gonna be like, okay, go. Okay, so the prescription hope that I've been at least giving my listeners right now. And obviously if you're an elite athlete or you're training for your fastest 5K or you're doing something specific, then I might tell you to do more. I might tweak it a little bit, but just for the average person who's just like, okay, I want to be fit. What are the things in the week, strength training wise and cardiovascularly speaking, that I should be doing to get the most benefits and to, give me the most longevity possible? Sprints are one of them. And I would say when we say sprints for the purpose of this conversation, we are talking max effort at whatever it is, running, biking, rowing, for 30 seconds or less. Okay. If you get up into that minute zone, it's not like it's wrong, but it's not a sprint anymore. I mean, that's like running a full 400. It's fast, right? But look at how fast the people who are running the 100 are going, and look at how fast the people running the 400, which is a full lap, right? It's much slower. It's not really a sprint. So it's a great athletic endeavor, but for the purpose of sprinting, You want the idea to be very max effort, as fast as you can possibly go for a pretty short amount of time. Usually that's going to be 20 to 30 seconds. You could also, depending on the runner, you could look at it from anywhere from a 1 to 200. Those are sprints, okay? Like, or you could even make it a 40. You can make it a 40 up a hill. Like, it just needs to be max effort, pretty dang short. And then you really are looking for, I would say, 2 to 3 minute recovery in between, no matter what, and maybe longer recovery if you need it. So it's not so much about the exact prescription of recovery. It's giving yourself enough recovery that you can then sprint at the same intensity again. And as soon as that intensity can't be hit anymore, maybe that's on round 3, maybe that's on sprint 4, you theoretically should be done. More is not better, because you're losing the whole point and the whole physiological adaptation. If you're not able to hit that intensity, you're losing it. Hopefully that makes sense. So 2 to 3 minutes, I usually err on the side of 3. And sometimes if it's just one of those days, I take more. Very, very hard max effort. Some people say supra max, like you're literally trying to go above your max. That's a sprint. Okay. Don't hang out in the no man's land 1 minute, 2 minute. Don't do that. And if I'm reading you right, where you said 4x4, the 4x4 protocol is for VO2 max, which I also recommend you do. However, I don't recommend you doing it as often. Sprints, if you're a healthy body and you're conditioned for it, because it will make you barf. I mean, that's a thing, or and you can pull a hamstring, right? So you have to get yourself there.
About that,
but you can sprint 2 to 3 times a week. The sessions are very short. I did just like a 20 minute session this morning. I just had time before I taught my group strength class, and it probably took me, I think I ran 600 meter sprints, and because that's all I had time for. And I think it took like
600 meters worth of sprints.
600 meter sprints.
Okay.
Yes, it's good. And I think that took me like 20 minutes. Like, these sessions don't take very long. You can tack them on to the end of a strength session, so they're not as stressful. They're not as long. It's all about intensity. You could do that 2 to 3 times a week, honestly, especially if you're not doing a lot of other things in the cardio, under the cardio topic. Like, if you are doing a bunch of other things, you might need to limit how much sprinting you're doing, or you might consider getting rid of some of that like steady state stuff and replacing it with sprints, because you're going to get better adaptation. So anyways, 2 to 3 times a week for sprints is fine. They don't take long. VO2 max, I say it's a lot more painful. It's a lot more intense. I would argue it is more stressful on the body. Very great for longevity and cardiovascular training. However, I would do that like twice a month. And what you're looking for VO2, and this is what the 4x4 is anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes of max effort work. But again, it won't be as intense as with your sprints, because you're going for a full 4 minutes or 5 minutes or 6 minutes, whatever you choose to do. And then an equal time recovery. So the 4x4 would be 4 minutes max effort. Maybe you're on a bike, followed by a 4 minute rest. 4 minute max effort, 4 minute rest. And the 4x4 is awesome. It's very mentally doable. You only have to do it 4 times. But you could go 5x5. I don't know many athletes who can do more than 5. Well, if it's really max effort in that 5 minutes, it is very painful. It is very, very painful. So that's what VO2 is. And hopefully that makes sense, the difference between VO2 training and sprinting.
Now, what if you're a guy like me who, just kind of slowly is starting to work out again at, very small levels. And would like to get to a situation where I'm sprinting. Like, I did it too early this summer and pulled my hamstring.
Yeah, it's easy to do.
Yeah. So how do you, maybe counsel someone to kind of, get into it, but how do you get to it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I would do it in layers. And I think when we did our show way back in the day on cardio, we kind of talked about this, that the first thing, if you're just starting, maybe you're not doing any cardio, you start with your steady state, your zone 2. So that's just your like walking. If that's where you need to start, maybe jogging just to get yourself used to it, because that's going to be the least risky, right? In terms of injury, throwing up, all the things. And you just have to kind of ease in from the shallow end with your cardiovascular conditioning. So several times a week, 20-minute walk, 30-minute jog, something like that. Then the next thing I would add is sprints, because that's not going to be it is more physically daunting, especially if you're running. You could, like we said in that show, you could get on an assault bike. You're way less likely to pull something. And it's mentally not as challenging, because it is max effort, but it's only 30 seconds or 20 seconds. Start 20 seconds, be like, I'm only going to do this 3 times. And then the next time, maybe you do 4, and you can kind of just baby step up into that. So it's a little more doable mentally. Beyond that,
it's so funny being like 45. I mean, it's still I feel very super capable of everything.
And you are.
And then I got into my 4th sprint, this summer I got my 4th sprint, and then I felt it. I was just like, oh.
You just pinged something.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just just so you know, like I've done that several times.
Yeah,
being in really good running shape. Like
right,
you can
right.
just do
I know.
it. You can just do it. Yeah.
I massage all the.
Yeah.
All the
I pulled something again. Yeah, it's not that hard, but you do have
Yeah.
to be careful. But running is probably the riskiest modality
Okay.
for that very reason.
Yeah.
And then once you dial in the sprints 2 or 3 times a week, honestly, just either, and we've talked about this also, it can be like a designated sprint session. Like, okay, I'm going to take these next 30 minutes. I'm going to warm up really well.
Yeah.
I'm going to do 5 sprints, 2 to 3 minute rest in between, and then move on with my day. It can also be trigger sessions. You could just literally hop on the bike. And this would be a good argument to have that in your office or at home or whatever, or the rower, or just go out and literally run down the sidewalk. That's the epitome of youth or staying young, is to be able to just go from a standstill to a dead run without hurting yourself.
Yeah.
That's what kids can do. And that's what we want. That's what we're chasing here. So I would do that next. And beyond that, if you have the desire and you're motivated and you really care, VO2 would come last. VO2 is by far the most mentally challenging.
Right.
But man, in terms of longevity, it's the people with the highest VO2s that do the best. And it doesn't matter if you're an athlete or not, having a high VO2 max is going to do good things for you in terms of avoiding all the different metabolic diseases that seem to be catching almost everybody. So, but that's the order I would do it in.
Okay. It's time to pick up our kids.
I know. Okay. Let me just do one more.
No. We gotta get out of here.
I can't.
Hold on to that for next week.
Okay.
Okay, everybody. That means you're gonna have to come back next week.
I'll get back to you.
You're gonna have to come back next week.
Why don't we just answer this one? I'll just promise to answer it at the top of the show
That's
next week, no matter what we're talking about. Okay, Chantel, I promise I won't forget about it.
Hang in there next week. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining Water Break. It's good to be with you again. If you want to be in a conversation with us, email us at RenchMedia.com. RenchMedia, wrench with no W, just RENCH, RenchMedia.com. And of course, check out Annie's website, AnnieWrench.com. And then we hope to see you at Pot of Gold America in October this fall.
Yes.
Until then, we'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys.
America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God, not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reese Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reese Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.